Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you a rather long video. It is to showcase the Peacock Paradise collection by Bibby. In fact, I'm also a guest blogger on the Spellbinders blog and I'll put the link in the description below so you can check it out. I show only about 3 cards I make, but I end up making just over a dozen cards with this collection. And I really hope you sit back and enjoy it. The collection has got dies, BetterPress plates, and 3D embossing folders, and I use all of them here. Here you've got the glorious Peacock, and then you've got the Cameo frames. I only make a couple of cards with this, and I also have the butterfly, Peacock butterfly. I adore this. This is my favorite. The Peacock butterfly and the 3D embossing folders are my favorite. I also like the glorious Peacock, but the butterfly to me ends up making 3 cards with it because I really like it. And these BetterPress plates, you've got the elegant peacock and the fabulous feathers. Of course, when it comes to BetterPress plates, not only do I use the letterpress system, but I also use the hot foil. I do hot foiling with the BetterPress plates. And these are the 3D embossing folders, which I absolutely adore. I have got a couple of techniques that I always like to use with 3D embossing folders. In fact, with 2D embossing folders as well, where I use the deboss side as well as the emboss side. And these 2 embossing folders lend so well to it. I start off with the glorious peacock, where I will be die cutting all of them, the dies in white card. I like to do that because then it gives me free reign on the colors I can add to the card, and I do add multiple colors to these. For this peacock, when I die cut it, I don't really have to put the outline against the peacock because it's already got an outline. So if you see, there are 2 elements to the peacock. You do not need to put the outline of the peacock against the die cut because it's already got lines on there to do so. So you can die cut them separately. So you can, here you see the lines there. So it does die cut the whole intricate bit on its own, and then you just die cut a background for it. And I do that. It remove all the tiny bits in it. Now you can choose to remove it or not and color them. It's up to you, but I remove them and I will be coloring each of them with ink, distress inks. I do some ink blending, putting them on a sticky mat. That's kind of what I tend to do with my die cuts because I find it easier. So here I'm putting some press and seal to cover the head of the peacock, and I'm doing some ink blending with distress inks. I will be using a different color for the head of the peacock, which is why I kind of blocked it. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. I do lots of Spellbinders videos, video tutorials, including the Spellbinders Club kits that comes out every month, as well as releases of their core collection. This is one full collection called Peacock Paradise by Bibby, and I absolutely adore it. So because they're peacocks, you can do any colors you want because they're so colorful. Here I'm adding some metallic pigment ink to the head of the peacock, and I will be putting some clear embossing powder to make sure it doesn't smudge, and also because it's pigment ink, it takes a long time to dry. Adding some super fine clear embossing powder gives it a nice shine, which I like. I do end up coloring over this embossed area later on because I think it blends too much to the background. So I guess choosing the colors are really important. Now, if I chose a different background to the solid outline of the peacock, maybe I wouldn't have to add the black. But you know, it really depends on the colors you add. I'm also adding some metallic gold, the pigment ink, the same pigment ink to the edges of these feathers, and going to do the same thing by doing putting some clear embossing powder and heat embossing it. And then after that, I will be doing some ink blending on these individual feathers that fit quite well on the peacock die cut as well. You don't have to put them exactly. You can put it haphazardly so it looks a bit ruffled feathers, but totally up to you on how you decide to assemble the peacock and its individual die cut feathers. All the products I use are listed in the description below. I don't put all the distress ink colors in the description below, but I do list it on the screen when I'm doing the ink blending so you can see what colors I use if you want to use them. Or you can use similar colors of other ink pads that you have in your collection. Here I'm just going to be ink blending the background. Now I wish I didn't use the crushed olive for the background, and it just blends too much with the gold or the peacock head. So perhaps I should have chosen a slightly lighter background to the solid outline of the die cut of the peacock, but it's done. I end up doing something slightly different. Sometimes when you get your colors in and you don't quite get them right, you can change them, you can add to them, and you will know when it looks right. You just can't tell sometimes. You will just know when it looks right, and that's how it works for me. Here I've die cut just an element of the peacock just around its feathers there, and just added some twisted citron to it because I wanted it to stand out. So I'm just using some liquid glue here to attach the intricate detail of the peacock to the background, and then I will add those green inlay die cuts to the bottom of the body, just around the bits that you can see. It's quite obvious where they're going to go. I love having my mixed media picker tool to put these tiny die cuts. I think it's just perfect for these types of applications of tiny die cuts. And using liquid glue to me gives me additional time to make sure it goes in the right slot. So easy enough to do, and I think it just pops well. I like to use blues and greens, and I've added some purples here as well. I think they just have a good blend to it. Another combination I like is reds, yellows, and oranges. And I do that in one of my other cards, and you'll see them in I think it's the peacock butterfly that I use it in. I think it's a good combination. And sometimes you have these go-to combinations. Here's another die cut of the peacock that I did with using rainbow colors. I will list the colors later on because I use another similar combination for the background when I do the 3D embossing folder. This is the peacock butterfly. Again, I have die cut it with white card. And this time, when you're die cutting the butterfly, you need to put the outline with it in order to die cut the intricate butterfly as well. These tiny die cuts are what I call the eyes that go on the body of the butterfly. So this looks like a bit like peacock eyes, if you like. You get see the similar patterns on peacocks as well, hence the name peacock butterfly, I think. I'm using some Copic markers to color these tiny die cuts in multiple colors. I'm placing them on press and seal so it's easier to color them. I could put them on my sticky mat, but I just didn't want my alcohol inks to get onto my sticky mat. Just a bit of a bother to clean them later on. Not difficult, but I thought why bother? We can use the press and seal and discard the press and seal later on. So I used multiple colors of alcohol markers to color them. And then I end up changing the color in the middle, the red. I put a different color because it didn't quite go with the background. You'll see me do that later on, but it's not difficult to do that. The good thing about this butterfly is it allows you to add a few different color combinations, and then you need to coordinate it with your background when you put it onto the card. Alternatively, you could also make a shaped card. I didn't do that here, but you could make a shaped card, a shape of a butterfly. So that would be quite cool as well. I didn't think of it at that point, but that's quite nice to do, different shaped cards. I end up putting these butterflies onto square cards, 5-inch square cards. I color one element of the die cut, the intricate bit on the top of the eye, with some metallic pigment ink there. It's the silver metallic pigment ink, just to give it a little bit of a neutral color. You don't want too many colors. I've already added a teal, a couple of shades of teal and the red, and I'm just putting it, that'll go over this with some silver. It's easy enough to assemble these. You just need to use some liquid glue, and I prefer using liquid glue. Use your picker tool to assemble these. It's just 3 elements to make each part of the eye that will go onto the body of the butterfly. And this is a slightly intricate one. And if you put too much glue, you can always press it onto a scrap piece of paper so it doesn't smudge. But if you dot the glue, it's easy enough to put it together. So there's 4 smaller ones and 5 larger eyes, and you just need to assemble all of them, and then you can start putting your butterfly together. Now once I've done that bit, now I need to do the background coloring of the intricate butterfly as well as the background of the outline of the butterfly. So there's 2 elements that needs to be ink blended. You could do it without the background. In fact, I do a card with just this intricate butterfly die cut without having the outline of the butterfly die cut. It's up to you really how you want to put this butterfly together. Placing the die cut onto a sticky mat on my stamp wheel, or use any other sticky mat. There's quite a few sticky mats in the market. I think it's so much easier to do your ink blending when you've got the die cut on a surface that doesn't move it. So it's easy to make the ink blending. So I use a couple of colors here. I use distress inks. I've got Chipped Sapphire, Faded Jeans, as well as my Peacock Feathers. I just think these colors go well together, blues and greens. You can't go wrong with them. And then I'm doing the background. Here's a different variation of the peacock butterfly using the red, orange, and yellow as I mentioned earlier. And I did this outline here, putting some gold metallic pigment ink at the edges of the butterfly wings and some blue ink in the middle. Now I try and do this for that orange, yellow, and red combination, but I end up using it for a different. You will see I end up using it for a different butterfly, and I do end up making two different cards. So it sometimes you can start thinking this is the color combination you want, and then you end up making a slightly different color combination. So that detailed butterfly with the blue and the gold, I end up using it separately for a different card, and I create a different detailed butterfly die cut for this card that I'm doing with the eyes of the red, orange, and yellow. It's, as I said, when you start the creative process, it's not going to be linear. It's going to be slightly take a different turn. So it doesn't go. The blue there just pops out too much. So I end up doing another die cut and I stick to the same basic colors, which is red, yellow, orange, and gold. So I'm doing it again with this gold. I'm putting this slightly brighter pigment ink, gold pigment ink, which is the Enchanted Gold from All Too New. Earlier, I used a gold pigment ink. That was the Catherine Pooler Metallic Pigment Ink, which is slightly darker gold. This is a slightly brighter gold. And I do the same thing. I put some fine clear embossing powder just to lock in that pigment ink so it doesn't smear. But I also think it dries better that way. For the shine, I just think it looks better. So this is the butterfly that I will assemble with those butterfly eyes that are yellow, orange, and red. I think it just goes better together, and the gold does lend to the whole color combination. Because I put this together, I decided to put a light blue for the background of the card because I think putting blue in the butterfly itself was too much. I hope you like how the card turned out. I liked it, and I used the embossing folder for the background. For the small die cut, which will be in the middle of the butterfly, I just applied some pigment ink, some gold pigment ink, and applying some embossing powder onto it, clear embossing powder. And because it's such a tiny die cut, I'm using a wooden peg to hold it when I do my heat embossing to melt the embossing powder. It's just easier that way, so you don't burn your fingers and you can make sure you heat emboss it, and it gives it a nice shine to go in the middle of the butterfly. Because I'm showcasing an entire collection in this video, it's a long video, but I also show you many tips and many techniques. I hope you enjoy it because I really enjoyed putting this together, and I enjoyed trying the different ideas and techniques to pull all these cards together. So I do show you embossing folder, 3D embossing folder techniques, inking techniques, ink blending techniques. So I really hope it's something that you enjoy watching, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me know what you think of this video. If it's too long or if there's too many techniques to take on at the same time, let me know, and I'd love to get your feedback. I think this color combination of the butterfly, the detailed die cut, as well as the background goes a lot better by sticking to the same family color and just introducing a neutral color like gold. I like it a lot better than the earlier combination of trying to introduce blue on the die cut. So I made this separately. So I'm not putting a background for this particular die cut. I'm just going to keep it separate. And this is the other die cut. So I made 3 of these and I put it on 3 different cards. I do show the assembly of these cards later on, but I'm going to stick to showing you how I use each of the products. Here are the BetterPress plates. So you've got the elegant peacock as well as the fabulous feathers, and I'm going to do some hot foiling with them as well. So you can use your BetterPress plates to do hot foiling and use the letterpress system. Per usual, when I do hot foiling, I use the hammer mill card. The hammer mill card is a very smooth card. So if you're going to use a colored card, you can either do some ink blending on your hammer mill card or use a smooth colored card. So the smoother it is, the better results you'll get with hot foiling. And let the card be at least 100 pounds thickness. So pretty side of the BetterPress plate against the pretty side of the hot foil, dull side of the hot foil facing the card, and you secure them with best ever craft tape. Make sure your hot foil machine, and I'm using the Gemini foil press, is ready, and just put it against the heated platform and make sure you've got your timing right as well. For the Gemini foil press, I tend to use the medium setting and use about 25 seconds, and that seems to go with most of the foils that I have. Some foils may require, especially the satin foils, may require to go through the heating and the embossing process twice. So you may have to do it twice basically. Some does not require twice. So this is, I'm using the polished brass hot foil, and in one go I can get some really beautiful results. If the foil doesn't transfer in the first time, because of the way I've secured the BetterPress plate, you can lift it. If it's not complete, you can put it through again. So it really depends. So this is what they call the hinge method. You can just check and see if it goes through well. If not, you can do it again. This is the elegant peacock, and I've used a rainbow confetti hot foil, and I need to put it through again. Because I used the hinge method and the way I secured the BetterPress plate, I just lifted it to see whether it is transferred, that is the hot foil is transferred, and that allowed me to put it back because the BetterPress plate did not move and I can get the image I want. I also do the same with all of the sentiments that come with both the elegant peacock as well as the fabulous feathers, because I think it hot foils beautifully, and all of these sentiments come with coordinating dies. I just go one round and I do it with gold, polished brass, as well as silver. So I've got options when I'm putting my card together. So all the sentiments are readily available. When I've got coordinating dies with sentiments, I tend to do extra die cuts of those shapes of those sentiments so I can back it and have some dimension when I put it onto the card. Now I'm using the elegant peacock BetterPress plate to do some letterpressing. So here I use the BetterPress letterpress system, and I'm using the Crane's Lettra 100% cotton card. because you can use any 100% cotton card. You can even use 100% cotton watercolor card if you intend to do some watercoloring. I tend to use this because it's really ideal and it can take water when I want to do some watercoloring as well. I'm going with the BetterPress ink, the black BetterPress ink, because I intend to color the image with some markers. I intend to actually use some watercolor markers, but I don't really end up using much of the water. I just use the watercolor markers and do some blending. So it comes out beautifully in the first round because I put a really thick layer of the black ink and it's really pretty. Now after I do this, I decide to add the sentiment as well. I don't have to put that big BetterPress plate there. I just leave the sentiment because it's all in the right place and put it through the machine again. And I'm using the Spellbinders Platinum 6 embossing and die cutting machine that goes through perfectly with the BetterPress letterpress system. Now I'm doing the feathers, the Fabulous Feathers BetterPress plate, but I decided to add different colors using the Desert Sunset BetterPress ink mini set. I'm first adding the Tuscan color and I'm blending it slightly so it isn't stark. So it's like a soft blend when it goes onto the card. It's not like sharp. It doesn't have like harsh colors at the edges where the color ends. So it's a nice blend before I put the next color, which is the coastal blue, and I'm adding it at the bottom. So I just put a couple of colors here. You can add more colors if you want, but I just wanted to show that you can actually put two different colors. But make sure you use a brush to kind of blend it so you kind of soften the edges where the colors have been applied onto the BetterPress plate straight from the ink pad. And you get a nice blended look. I'm going to also use another color that's on the same set, which is the clay, I think, and I'm going to use that for the sentiment. So the clay is a slightly darker version of the other color that I've applied on the feather, which is the Tuscan color. Easy enough to do. So the letterpress system is foolproof. The first time I used it, I got excellent results. Hot foiling, you need a bit of practice, but the BetterPress, excellent results first time. Now I'm doing some ink blending to use the 3D embossing folders. So the 3 ingredients that you need for good, easy ink blending is make sure you use the right card. So I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth card. You got domed foam pads, which makes ink blending a lot easier, and make sure your ink pads are nice and juicy. It's easier to ink blend with the Distress Oxide inks, but I'm using Distress inks here. I'm quite an old hand at ink blending, so I'm fine using this. But if you're a newbie, start with Distress Oxide inks. It's nice and creamy to get good blends. Here I show you all the colors that I use. So use similar colors that you have in your stash and you can get some lovely ink combinations. I'm using the Feather Flourish 3D embossing folder, but I'm going to be showing you how I use the deboss section first. I'm moistening the back of the ink panel just to make sure the fibers are soft enough to prevent cracking from the card. And I use the right sandwich for a 3D embossing folder, and I've got the debossed image here, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Now, if you want to keep your card not warped and to dry straight, you can keep it to dry in the embossing folder by putting a heavy object on it, and it'll dry straight and you don't need to have any warped card panels to deal with. Now the same color combination, I'm doing the embossed image. So you got the debossed image and the embossed image. And I show you two different techniques and I make cards with this. These are the techniques, are my go-to techniques when I use embossing folders. Now I'm going to swipe a darker color onto the debossed image just so that the depressed image shows off beautifully. So this is really easy to do with the debossed image. Now for the embossed image, I'm going to use a metallic gold pigment ink and just very lightly swipe just to get all the erased parts of the pattern or the image of those feathers. Just so it gets all the raised bits and you can see the gold highlight and make those feathers come out a bit boldly. So you got two different results, one debossed and one embossed, and I think it looks beautifully. For the embossed bit, you can even sprinkle some clay embossing powder and emboss it, heat emboss it if you want. Now this is a peacock motif, and this is the color, a rainbow color I mentioned earlier on the peacock die cut that I used. I used the same color combination. These are my go-to colors when I want a rainbow combination on a card front. For usual, I moisten the back of the card panel, put it through the embossing machine with the right sandwich for whatever embossing machine you use, and you get the debossed image. So beautiful. And because I don't use that much of water, it doesn't warp. I'm using VersaFine Clear Medieval Blue color and lightly swipe it across the debossed image, as I did earlier where I used the brown. So it comes out really pretty, and I'm going to use this very simply on a card front. Now I'm going to start assembling the cards. Here I've done some ink blending with a couple of distress inks, and I'm going to put it through the embossing folder, and I want the embossed image. It looks really pretty, and then I'm going to cut it slightly smaller. Initially, I want to put it onto an A7 card, but then I changed my mind and I cut the embossed panel slightly smaller to put it onto a 5-inch square card. I preferred a square card for the butterflies, and in fact, for 2 of the 3 butterfly cards, I use a square card, and for 1 card, I use a slightly shortened A7 card. I like to put a foam sheet behind an embossed panel for 2 reasons. First, it gives it a bit of dimension, and secondly, it keeps any embossed panels, if it's slightly warped, it keeps it straight. I think it really adds to the assembly of the card. And all I have to do now is add the beautifully die-cut and colored peacock butterfly and add an hot foil sentiment. This is the sentiment that I hot foiled using the BetterPress plates. I think it looks really pretty. So adding the blue to the background is better than adding the blue onto the die cut itself. I like the way the card turned out. Do let me know what you think. And in fact, I'd like to hear which is your favorite card, which are your favorite products in the Peacock Paradise collection from Dawn Bibby. So here I've got the background. I've used Crackling Campfire and Rusty Hinge, but I'm not too happy because I think it clashes with the red that's on the eye of the butterfly, on the body of the butterfly. So I applied some Crackling Campfire ink onto white card, die cut it, and I'm putting those tiny elements onto the eye, onto the front of it. Now it matches the background of the card. A small thing, but I think it makes a difference. For the final butterfly, which doesn't have a background, I just decided to keep the background of the card simple because the butterfly, it's quite see-through, and I just wanted to add some foam, some dimensional foam and the wings of the butterfly so it stands up a little bit. I just tried this for this butterfly. I didn't do it for the other butterflies because this one doesn't have a backing, so you can't pull it up a bit, but I thought if you put a little bit of dimension at the wings, the tip of the wings, it looks a little bit better because it gives it the whole image a little bit of dimension. Add a sentiment and voila, you're done. Also adding a gold mat to the background really brings out the gold in the butterfly. This is the debossed image from the Peacock Motif 3D embossing folder. I added some metallic gold paint to all the dots of the image, and then I die cut some wings from the elegant peacock die set and just going to assemble the card with the sentiment flown to your feathers. I think it's simple enough. I wanted to keep a neutral color for the peacock feathers because I didn't want to compete with the background. I could have just put the sentiment. Even without those die cuts will be fine. Just the sentiment on its own is fine because the background is so pretty. It just draws the eye. I like the simplicity of these kind of embossed cards. I'm just putting a little bit, a tiny bit of dimension at the edge of the die cuts just to give it a slight raise from the card front. These are the other embossed images, and this is the fabulous feathers of the embossed image, and I'm adding some glossy accents to the centers of the feathers. Later on, you will see me sprinkle a little bit of glitter onto it while the glossy accents are still not fully dried, just to give it a little bit more glitter and sparkle. I add some glitter to the centers of the debossed image, and that's where I've got the glitter out, so I decided to add it on the embossed image as well. So here I put a full circle of liquid glue and sprinkle some white, or I think it's crystal glitter, onto the middle of the feathers just so that it kind of a little bit sparkly. I know glitter can be a little bit messy, but if you've got those drier sheets, you can wipe them up quite well, and you just need to be careful because I have lots of glitter, and the reason I don't use it because it's not really near where I'm sitting, but also it's quite messy. So, but I think glitter really adds beautifully to the image. Now, for the sentiment, for the debossed image of those fabulous feathers, I wanted something darker. So I'm going to use a letterpress sentiment. So I'm using mulberry, and I'm just going to do the sentiment, letterpress it, and I'm going to die cut it with the coordinating die because I wanted the sentiment to be darker to kind of match the background of that embossed background, or debossed background rather. I think that really looks simple and pretty. You don't need to do too much because the background speaks for itself. I hope that there's not too much in this video to digest. I did go from technique to technique and little tips here and there. I hope it's not too much to digest, and I hope you really enjoy it. Here's me sprinkling the glitter while it's out onto the debossed image while the glossy accents are still not completely dry. I just think when it dries, you'll see a nice little sparkle on the glossy accents, and I wanted the glossy accents because it dries with a little bit of dimension, and I think that really pretty. And since I have the glossy accents out, I tend to put it on quite a few areas. You'll see me put it onto all my butterflies as well. So this is the colorful peacock when I wanted a dark background. So I just got a black background, splattered it with some splatter white opaque watercolor from Spellbinders, and I'm doing the same thing here, but this time I die cut those little teardrops around the start of the feathers at the bottom of the body of the peacock with silver. I see these metallic colors, silver gold is what I call neutral colors, because I don't want to compete with the colorfulness of the peacock in itself, and I end up adding quite a few of those inlays in silver, and I've got a silver hot foiled sentiment here which I'm just adding. Happy birthday, beautiful. And that's why I did my hot foiling in silver and gold, because you never know what you need. So I added an additional inlays of that metallic silver on the body of the peacock just to give it a bit more of a balance with the silver of the sentiment. I really like how this card turned out. In fact, this is one of the 3 cards that is shown on the Spellbinders blog, and I have the link to the blog in the description below. Here is the image that I letterpress image, which I hot foil with rainbow confetti hot foil. I'm just doing some simple ink blending with Distress Ink Villainous Potion as well as Festive Berries at the top. I'm going to put it onto a card front with a matte of metallic purple. Keeping it simple when you've got a colorful hot foil is probably the way to go. I also add some purple distress ink onto the hot foiled sentiment. Now I didn't like it, so I end up putting the same sentiment, but I ink blended it with the pink because it stands out better. So you will see me add that at the final cards towards the end of the video. But I go with purple here, but I end up overlaying it with the pink sentiment later on. And that's the thing. Once you finish the card, sometimes you'll realize that it doesn't quite blend. The colors don't really balance, and you can always add later on and change it up. So this card is an A7 card size. I'm going to do some ink splatters at the top of the card with the distress ink. Just add a little bit of ink and then just use your paintbrush and do some light splatters. I just think it gives a little bit of interest to the card front with the image that has been simply hot foiled. After adhering the letterpressed image onto an A2 card front, I decide to add some color to the center of the feather. I just use distress ink to add some water, use a paintbrush and add. As I said, this card, Crane's Letra card, 100% cotton card, allows for some water coloring. Not too much water, but just a little bit, and it just adds to the image. Again, I'm going to put some glossy accents to the center of the feather just to give it a little bit of shine and dimension. And the card's done. You just need to leave it aside for about 10-20 minutes and it'll dry easily. So this card here is the letterpressed image of the peacock, and I use my Zic Clean color markers and to do some coloring. They're easily blendable. You can use water with this, but I don't. I just blend the colors together and I use various of these markers. I don't use these markers often, but I think I need to bring it out when I do my letterpressing because I think it really goes well with this card on the 100% cotton card. Takes it really well. I use quite a few different colors on this peacock. I think I go a little bit nuts because I've got all my colors out. I use my carrying brush markers as well, my Zic Clean color markers, whatever I have, I've used it. And I kind of went a little bit crazy with the colors I used here. But I kind of liked the colorfulness of how it turned out. I like how it turned out. I think it looks really pretty. I mat it onto a black card and I put it onto a slightly reduced size A7 card. So a A7 card is 5 by 7 inches. This is 5 by 6 inches. So I've reduced it slightly rather than put it onto an A2 card front. And here I'm going nuts with my glossy accents by adding it to all the little centers of the various flowers. I think it adds a shine and a bit of dimension to the dried image at the end of the day. And I think it looks pretty. I hope you like this card. This is another one of the cards that ends up on the Spellbinders blog as well, as I mentioned earlier. I just want to show different techniques that I use with all the various products, and this is a pure letterpress. So this is where I'm adding, taking my Sharpie and adding some black onto the gold embossed areas because I think it blends too much with the background. You don't have to do that. I just didn't like how it looked. So it's my son actually mentioned it and said it blends too much the background and perhaps you could salvage it. I was going to get rid of it, but I did salvage it with putting that black. And I decided to use this as the background, this hot foiled image of the fabulous feathers. It's a BetterPress plate which I hot foil and I'm using that in the background for the elegant peacock die set. I just thought we can mix it up because the theme is all about peacocks, and I think the peacock feathers really go well. And I put it onto an A7 card and add that beautiful sentiment, which I hot foil with the Aura hot foil. I'm just adding the die cut with some dimensional tape onto the card front and adding the sentiment. Nothing else. I was thinking of doing some ink blending in the background, but I decided not to because the peacock itself is quite colorful and I didn't want to take away from that and kept the background rather simple with the hot foiled background and the hot foiled sentiment. Now I'm completing the assembly of the cards by adding some gems. I've got quite a few Spellbinders gems that I add. Some really pretty gems here. Here I'm using the Orchid Spellbinders gems just to add to it. I like the fact it comes in various sizes because I like to put my gems on the card at least 3 different sizes to give it a little bit of variation. I think it looks pretty that way. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. This is the Cameo frame set, a very simple set. I'm just die cutting the images. I die cut it, use a little bit of foiling in the background in the ovals and a background of 3D embossing folder. straightforward and easy to do. I decided to keep it simple, no ink blending, but I use some rich colors in the background so it can really show off really well. Because it's quite intricate, I do use a shim when I die cut it. If not, it doesn't die cut really well. So I do use a shim of a card to do my die cutting to get all the little inlays removed. If not, it gets a little bit messy. It really depends on your die cutting machine. Add a shim one at a time. Don't break your machine and see how it goes. So I decided to use the center in the oval to use one of those foiled images of those fabulous feathers. And I just used the oval to die cut it and the background 3D embossing folder. For one of the backgrounds, I do some light ink swiping with metallic gold. Rather straightforward. I do lots of Spellbinders tutorial videos as well as the core collection. So do check out my YouTube channel, Angela Brennan Creations, where you can see lots and lots of Spellbinders products being showcased. These are the two colors I've chosen, a royal blue and dark teal, and I think it's really simple, and I use the sentiments I odd foiled with the BetterPress plates. I'm just swiping the metallic gold ink onto the embossed areas really lightly so it just captures the raised areas as I did earlier, because I wanted to keep it rather simple and not get too excited and put too many colors. I just wanted to keep just 3 colors on the card front without adding too many colors to the mix. Sometimes that's the best. And here I'm just adding the intricate oval cameo frame with my liquid glue. I'm just putting dots of it so that it's not too much glue and it doesn't flood or smudge on the card front. And the oval is the die cut with the oval, smaller oval, again attaching it with some liquid glue. Now the sentiment that I hot foiled, I die cut it with what I would call the rectangle bracket die that comes with this Cameo frame set. And I also die cut second image or second die cut with gold card, which I cut into half to put a little bit of a shadow on the sentiment to break up the color against the background. I hope that makes sense. If you're still watching the video, thank you so much. I know it's a long video. I've got loads of tips and tricks in this video, lots of different techniques. I hope you enjoyed it, seeing a variety of them all in one video, though it's quite long. But I just wanted to showcase all of the Peacock Paradise collection by Dawn Bibby in one video because I think it's such a beautiful collection that complements using them all together. So because they complement one another, I've used quite a few of the products in each card. You can't use one without the other, and the sentiments go so well together as well. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts, what card you liked best, which products you liked best. All of the products I've used are listed in the description below for your ease of reference, and I will also put a link to the Spellbinders blog where I'm a guest block designer. Thank you so much for stopping by. Happy crafting, and do stay on till the end where you get to see close-up pictures of all the cards I've created. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care.